Have you ever wondered if there are truths about God and the soul that have been kept hidden from you for centuries? Imagine if, right now, you could uncover 7 sacred lessons capable of transforming not just the way you see faith, but the way you live, breathe, and experience your entire spiritual journey. What if everything you thought you knew about connecting with the divine was only the surface, and behind it lies a deeper, more powerful reality? Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, believed these 7 divine lessons were concealed for generations, yet they hold the key to awakening your soul and opening a direct channel to God Himself. And here's the most fascinating part. The final lesson is said to be the most powerful of all, a revelation so profound that it could completely reshape how you understand your own faith. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Your presence here makes this journey even more meaningful, because as we explore these teachings together, we create a ripple of light and truth that spreads far beyond this moment. Think for a second. Has this ever happened to you? You search for answers in religion, rituals, or traditions, and still, deep inside, you feel there is something missing, a silence that no words or ceremonies can fill. Cayce's message was that the missing piece has been hidden, often overlooked, because it cannot be found in the noise of the world. It lives in deeper places, the kind of places that only reveal themselves when the soul is ready to listen. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. Each of these lessons is not distant or unreachable. They are woven into your daily life, waiting to be remembered, waiting to awaken. For centuries, humanity has sought God in temples, in repeated prayers, in external forms of devotion, and yet, Cayce insisted that the truest connection was far more intimate, more personal, and far more powerful. These 7 hidden lessons, once understood, allow us to experience God not as a distant figure, but as a living presence that pulses within us, surrounding us, guiding every breath. They are not abstract theories. They are practical keys, timeless tools that anyone, anywhere, can apply. What you're about to hear challenges what most of us were taught to believe. Imagine realizing that God does not demand grand rituals to be near you, but instead whispers in silence, dwells in the sacredness of your body, answers with sincerity when you pray, and manifests through acts of love and faith in your everyday life. Each key is like a step that brings you closer to this profound connection. And if you stay with me, you'll see how every one of these steps has the power to unlock something new in your spirit. Cayce believed that knowledge alone was not enough. The true transformation happens when these hidden lessons move from words into lived experience. That's why we will go beyond information. We will enter into understanding. We'll look at how silence becomes the divine language, how the body itself is a temple of God's light, how prayer can transform reality, how service to others is the purest form of worship, and how faith itself becomes a force that can move mountains. Each of these keys is essential, but it is the last one that holds a secret so profound. It could change not only how you see God, but how you see yourself in relation to Him. Has this ever happened to you? You sense that there is more to life, more to faith, but the answers you've been given don't quite fill that longing inside? That is the call of the soul. And Cayce believed it is that very call which prepares us to receive these lessons. The moment you begin to listen, everything begins to shift. And now, as we take our first steps into these revelations, remember this: what you are about to discover is not just a story from the past, it is an invitation for your present, an invitation to experience a direct, living, and unshakable connection with God. The journey has only just begun, and the first key is waiting to open before you. If content like this inspires you and adds value to your journey, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next insights we share here. There is something profoundly unsettling about silence, isn't there? For many people, it feels uncomfortable, even threatening, as if the absence of sound must be filled with distractions, conversations, or noise from the world around us. But Edgar Cayce revealed that silence is not an absence at all. It is not emptiness. It is fullness. Within that stillness lies a living, breathing dimension of truth that cannot be accessed in any other way. It is the moment when the mind stops its endless chatter, and the soul begins to hear what has been hidden all along. Think about it. How often do we run from silence without even realizing it? The television left on in the background, the phone that never stops buzzing, the constant stream of information and opinions pulling us from one thought to the next. This constant noise may keep us occupied, but it also keeps us disconnected from what matters most. Cayce understood that behind the scenes of our restless minds, there is a sacred portal waiting for us, a doorway into the divine presence itself, and that doorway only opens when we dare to be still. Silence is not passive, it is active. It reshapes the way we perceive ourselves and the world. In stillness, the soul reorganizes its scattered energies, and the spirit becomes open to revelations far beyond the reach of logic or reason. It is here, in this quiet dimension, that inspiration flows naturally, like a hidden river nourishing the deepest roots of our being. That is why Cayce said that no amount of study, no volume of prayers, can touch true depth unless they are born from silence first. Without it, we only skim the surface. With it, we break through into something infinitely greater. And when silence becomes a practice, even a few minutes each day, it begins to transform everything else. Suddenly, prayer is no longer just words but a living force. Decisions are no longer rushed or clouded by anxiety, but illuminated by a clarity that feels guided. The impact is felt not only internally, but in relationships, work, and the way we experience life itself. What once seemed confusing or overwhelming takes on new meaning because the inner noise is gone, and what remains is presence, pure, sacred presence. It is in these moments of inner stillness that the soul begins to recognize truths that cannot be taught by books or doctrines. The hidden truth is that God does not compete with the noise of the world. He waits patiently, speaking in the subtle whispers of peace that only silence can carry, and this realization changes everything. What once felt like loneliness in silence becomes intimacy. What once felt like emptiness becomes the fullness of divine companionship. The very mindset we carry about silence shifts from avoidance to reverence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because silence does more than open a doorway. It becomes the very language of God. In this sacred quiet, inspiration turns into guidance, guidance turns into strength, and strength into transformation. And this is where Cayce's vision becomes clear. Silence is not a pause from life. It is the foundation of life itself, the hidden structure that supports every genuine spiritual experience. Write in the comments, "Silence speaks to me," if this resonates with you. There is a door that every human being carries inside, though most walk through life without ever noticing it. It isn't built of wood or stone, and it cannot be seen with the eyes. It is an invisible entrance, one that only opens when the ego finally grows quiet. Edgar Cayce described this inner passage as the point where the restless noise of I fades, and what remains is the presence of God waiting patiently behind it. This is not a metaphorical idea, but a lived reality. When we silence the endless chatter of fear, pride, and doubt, we begin to sense a dimension of life that feels more real than anything we've ever known. It is as if the soul finally remembers what it had forgotten, and in that remembrance, peace is restored. Silence is not just a pause in activity. It is medicine for the spirit. In those rare moments of stillness, when the heart is no longer weighed down by the past or anxious about the future, the soul begins to heal. Emotional scars that seemed permanent start to soften. The hidden wounds of disappointment, loss, or loneliness dissolve gently, as though touched by an unseen hand. Cayce taught that silence realigns us with the divine rhythm, much like tuning an instrument so it can once again play in harmony. And just as music cannot flow through a broken string, the spirit cannot flow freely through us until we are aligned within. This is why stillness is not emptiness. It is restoration. It is the behind-the-scenes work of the Creator, reshaping our inner landscape while we simply rest in presence. And in this resting, something remarkable happens. The Creator begins to speak, not through booming voices or thunderous commands, but through subtle inspirations. a thought that arrives with unusual clarity, a calm feeling in the midst of uncertainty, a quiet nudge that seems to come from nowhere, yet carries a weight that lingers. This is how divine communication works. It does not compete with the volume of the world, because truth does not need to shout. It whispers, and those whispers are felt more than heard. They appear as gentle revelations that settle into the heart, guiding decisions, shifting our mindset, and illuminating paths we didn't even know were possible. Think of a time when you faced a choice, and after the noise of analysis and doubt subsided, a quiet certainty arose. That certainty may not have had logical proof, yet it carried peace with it. That is what Cayce meant when he said the Creator speaks through calmness. It is the kind of knowing that bypasses reasoning and goes straight to the soul. And when you follow it, the impact can be transformative. A decision made from that place doesn't just change circumstances, it changes you. It strengthens trust, reshapes priorities, and aligns you with something larger than yourself. Silence, then, is not passive at all. It is dynamic. It is alive. It creates a space where the spirit is cleansed, where clarity replaces confusion, and where divine presence can finally be felt without distortion. And every time we step into that invisible door, the world outside begins to look different. Relationships soften, the weight of stress lifts, and even the hardest days carry a thread of peace running quietly beneath them. This is the hidden truth. Silence does not take us away from life. It returns us to it, but with new eyes and a renewed heart. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once we recognize silence as the language of God, we begin to see how it connects directly with the body, the mind, and the choices we make every single day. It is here that the journey of transformation becomes undeniable, as the sacred presence within begins to shape everything we are and everything we do. Write in the comments, "I choose inner peace," if this speaks to you. If silence is the inner door to God, then the body is the temple where that door resides. Edgar Cayce believed that every cell of our being, every breath we take, and every heartbeat pulsing within us carries the spark of divine energy. To him, the body was never something ordinary or disposable. It was a living sanctuary, a sacred space designed to host the presence of the Creator. And when you begin to see yourself through that lens, the way you treat your body is no longer just a matter of health or habit. It becomes an act of reverence. Think about the impact of that mindset shift. How different would your daily choices feel if you saw them not only as physical maintenance, but as sacred rituals? Eating with intention, resting without guilt, moving with awareness. Each one becomes a form of worship, an offering of gratitude to the one who animates your very existence. Cayce often reminded people that honoring the body was not separate from spiritual practice. It was the foundation of it. To nourish yourself, to breathe deeply, to protect your energy, these were not luxuries, but responsibilities, because the soul depends on a balanced temple to express itself fully. Behind the scenes of every illness, Cayce saw a hidden truth. Disease does not arise from the body alone, but from an imbalance that begins in thought, emotion, and spirit. Fear, resentment, or constant stress weigh down the inner temple, creating disharmony that eventually surfaces as physical pain or weakness. The body, in this way, becomes a mirror reflecting the state of the soul. When love, forgiveness, and inner peace guide our mindset, the body resonates with health. When negativity dominates, the sacred harmony is disrupted. This doesn't mean that every illness is our fault, but rather that the body and spirit are inseparable, each influencing the other in ways modern science is only beginning to confirm. Cayce believed that healing often starts not with medicine alone, but with a change in consciousness, a decision to let go of toxic patterns, to release burdens, and to realign with higher principles. And when that alignment happens, the body responds. Balance returns, strength grows, and vitality flows once more. It is powerful to realize that caring for yourself is not selfish at all. It is sacred. A simple choice like eating nourishing food, practicing stillness, or getting enough rest is a silent prayer, a declaration that you respect the divine temple you've been given. When you neglect it, when you drive it into exhaustion or drown it in harmful thoughts, You close off the space where the divine longs to dwell. But when you honor it, the temple shines, and the presence within becomes undeniable. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because Cayce taught that the connection between body, mind, and spirit is not just symbolic, it is a living system. When the body is cared for, the spirit flows with greater clarity, and when the spirit is nourished, the body becomes more resilient. It is a cycle of transformation that reveals a hidden truth. The divine connection we seek outwardly has been alive within us all along, pulsing in every cell and every breath. Write in the comments, "My body is sacred," if this resonates with you. When the body is cared for with reverence, it becomes more than flesh and bone. It turns into a refined instrument, finely tuned to capture the presence of the divine. Edgar Cayce believed that this purification of the inner temple allowed a person to experience God not as a distant concept, but as a living presence felt in every fiber of existence. Just as a clear glass allows light to shine through without distortion, a body kept in balance, through rest, nutrition, and mindful habits, allows the spirit to radiate freely. Self-care, then, is not indulgence, but alignment, a conscious decision to create space for the sacred to dwell within. From this foundation, the power of prayer takes on an entirely new dimension. Cayce did not see prayer as a routine repetition of phrases, but as a living force, an energy that vibrates beyond the boundaries of thought and language. When prayer rises from a soul that is centered and a body that is open, it becomes like a current of light traveling into unseen realms. It transforms the atmosphere of the heart and extends outward, shaping circumstances, relationships, and even the hidden threads of daily life. This is why some prayers feel different, why they carry weight, why they shift something invisible yet undeniable. And at the core of this mystery lies sincerity. God does not answer polished speeches or mechanical rituals, but the raw, unguarded sincerity of the heart. Authentic prayer is not about convincing the Creator with eloquence. It is about surrendering the self in trust. Instead of presenting a list of demands, the soul acknowledges the wisdom of divine will, aligning itself with a higher purpose. This shift in mindset changes everything, because prayer stops being an act of asking and becomes an act of becoming. It is no longer about what we want, but about who we are willing to be in the presence of God. Behind the scenes of every genuine prayer, a transformation occurs. Fear gives way to peace, confusion dissolves into clarity, and heavy burdens feel lighter, not because circumstances instantly change, but because the spirit within us changes. That inner transformation radiates outward, impacting the decisions we make, the energy we bring into relationships, and the way we navigate challenges. Cayce insisted that when prayer is true, it reshapes both the inner and outer world, revealing a hidden truth. What is most powerful is not the words spoken, but the state of the heart that speaks them. And when prayer is experienced this way, it becomes impossible to separate it from daily life. It is no longer reserved for sacred spaces or special occasions. It flows, naturally, in moments of gratitude, in quiet whispers of distress, in spontaneous outbursts of joy. Prayer becomes like breathing, something inseparable from the journey itself, and the more it is practiced with sincerity, the more its impact grows. It binds us to the divine in a constant dialogue, a conversation not confined to words but carried by energy, trust, and love. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once we understand prayer as vibration and sincerity, as its true language, we begin to see how its power extends beyond us. It does not stop at the individual soul but moves outward, touching the lives of others, weaving connections that reveal just how close the Creator truly is. Write in the comments, "Prayer is living energy," if this resonates with you. When Cayce spoke of prayer as an intimate dialogue, he wanted us to understand that it was never meant to be distant or formal. True prayer, he said, is closer to a conversation with a trusted friend than to a ritual that follows strict rules. Imagine opening your heart without filters, speaking honestly, allowing gratitude, sorrow, hope, or even confusion to flow freely. In that vulnerability, something extraordinary happens. the dialogue becomes real. You no longer feel like you're speaking into empty space. You feel the exchange of energy, a quiet response that may not come in words but in peace, in strength, or in an unmistakable sense of being heard. This intimacy nourishes the soul and creates a current that carries into every part of life, like an invisible thread weaving moments together with divine presence. Cayce often pointed to the healing power of this dialogue. He saw again and again that when thoughts were elevated through sincere prayer, the body itself responded. Not because prayer was a magical formula, but because it aligned the inner world with higher vibrations of harmony. Healing, in this sense, was not only physical, it was emotional, mental, and spiritual. A burdened heart would find relief, a restless mind would grow calm, and the body would begin to mirror the peace found within. There are countless stories of people who carried pain or illness and discovered through prayer a strength and renewal they could not explain. It wasn't always about immediate cures. Sometimes it was about resilience, the ability to walk through challenges with lightness, and the discovery that transformation begins in the unseen layers of the soul before it becomes visible in the body. And yet, Cayce went even further by showing that prayer does not end with words or even with personal healing. It expands outward, spilling into the way we live, the choices we make, and the love we share. He called this service. The idea that prayer in its purest form is action. When you listen to another person's pain, when you offer kindness without expecting return, when you lift someone who has fallen, you are extending the dialogue you began in silence into the world. Each gesture becomes a living prayer, one that connects you not only with the person you serve, but with the divine source that flows through both of you. The hidden truth behind this teaching is that service transforms both sides. It may look like you are helping another, but in reality you are also being healed, also being strengthened. The act of giving opens a pathway within you that words alone cannot reach. That is why small acts, an encouraging word, a moment of compassion, a quiet presence, carry such profound impact. They are not random. They are vibrations of love moving through the unseen fabric of life, leaving traces far beyond what we can measure. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when service is understood as prayer in action, it reveals that spirituality is never meant to be confined to private devotion. It is lived in the everyday, expressed in decisions, in mindset, in the way we choose to embody love where it is least expected. And it is in those moments that we discover how close the divine truly is, not only within us, but shining through us toward others. Put down in the comments, love in action, if this speaks to your heart. Faith, when stripped of appearances, is not measured by the words we say or the beliefs we claim. It is revealed through compassion. Edgar Cayce insisted that faith becomes tangible only when it flows into action, when love ceases to be a concept and begins to take form in the way we treat others. This is the hidden truth behind so many spiritual teachings, that connection with God is never meant to be locked away in private devotion, but expressed in gestures of care, empathy, and genuine kindness. A compassionate heart reflects divine presence more clearly than any doctrine could, because it demonstrates what it means to embody love in the midst of daily life. And here lies something deeply transformative. Even the smallest acts carry a weight that far exceeds the moment in which they occur. A word spoken at the right time, a smile offered to someone on the edge of despair, a moment of listening without judgment. These may seem insignificant, but in the unseen dimension, they create ripples that travel far. Cayce believed that such acts touch the spiritual realm itself, echoing like vibrations of light that continue long after the gesture has ended. This is why he urged us never to underestimate what we can do for another. The true impact of love cannot be measured by human standards. Its effect extends beyond time and space, weaving into the fabric of eternity. Service, then, becomes more than an act of charity. It is a doorway into the very essence of Christ. Cayce often drew upon the example of Jesus washing his disciples' feet, a gesture so simple and humble, yet filled with unimaginable depth. In that moment, the Master of all creation demonstrated that divinity does not shine brightest in authority or grandeur, but in humility and service. every time we act with that same spirit, we align ourselves with Christ's essence, stepping into the same stream of compassion that flows from the Creator. And the beauty of it is that this gateway is always open. You don't need wealth, status, or extraordinary talent to enter it. A quiet act of love, a moment of sacrifice, or a willingness to place another's need above your own is enough to walk through. Behind the scenes, this is what faith truly looks like when lived. It isn't about memorizing sacred words or appearing outwardly religious. It is about letting compassion guide decisions, shaping the way we see and interact with others. It is about cultivating a mindset that recognizes the divine spark in every person and chooses to honor it, even when it costs us something. And in doing so, we discover something unexpected. Service not only blesses those we help, it transforms us. It polishes the rough edges of ego, teaches patience, dissolves pride, and expands the soul into greater freedom. This is the journey of faith in action, a constant transformation that draws us closer to God through every humble gesture. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because if service reveals Christ's essence, then faith itself becomes more than belief. It becomes a living trust that shapes who we are, how we act, and how we face the hidden trials of life with courage and light. Write in the comments, "Faith lives through love," if this resonates with you. Faith, as Cayce described it, was never meant to be a passive state of belief. It is not about repeating phrases or holding ideas in the mind while life moves on unchanged. True faith is active trust, a force that reshapes the way we think, the way we make decisions, and the way we respond to the challenges that cross our path. It is a constant alignment of the inner world with the unseen reality of God's presence. When faith is alive, it does not wait for perfect circumstances. It acts, it chooses, it dares to walk forward, even when the path seems uncertain. This is the hidden truth behind faith. It is not about certainty, but about trust that transforms uncertainty into opportunity. Faith without action, Cayce warned, becomes fragile. Belief that does not translate into lived choices is like a seed left in the soil but never watered. It may have potential, but it never grows roots deep enough to withstand the storms of life. Genuine faith reveals itself when we take steps aligned with what we say we believe, even if those steps require courage. It is seen in the decision to forgive when resentment feels easier, in the choice to persist when despair whispers to give up, in the willingness to show love in places where love seems undeserved. These moments may look ordinary on the outside, but behind the scenes, they are the very foundation of spiritual growth, proof that faith is alive and unshakable. And perhaps the most powerful part of Cayce's teaching is that trials themselves are not obstacles to faith, but opportunities for it. Life's difficulties, whether financial struggles, illness, loss, or broken relationships, are often seen as barriers to peace. Yet Cayce saw them as invitations, challenges that call us to trust more deeply in the Creator. Each trial becomes a mirror, reflecting whether we will collapse into fear or rise into trust. And when we choose trust, something remarkable happens. The problem may not vanish instantly, but our perception of it changes. Instead of being consumed by the weight of difficulty, we begin to see it as a path toward transformation, a chance to experience firsthand that divine strength is real. Think about those moments when you had no certainty about what tomorrow would bring, yet you moved forward anyway. That is faith at work, not blind belief, but a living force guiding you step by step. The beauty of this truth is that faith does not need to see the entire journey. It only needs to take the next step, trusting that the light will be revealed along the way. And in that trust, fear begins to lose its grip, courage grows, hope is renewed. The mindset shifts from asking, "Why me?" to asking, "What is this teaching me?" That single change of perspective carries the power to turn suffering into wisdom and hardship into resilience. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because Cayce also revealed that when faith is exercised in this way, it opens hidden channels of strength and transformation that touch not only our inner life, but also the world around us. What begins as trust within becomes impact without, showing that faith is not just personal, but a force that radiates into everything we touch. Write in the comments, "My faith takes action," if this resonates with you. When Cayce spoke about faith transforming adversity into strength, he was pointing to a hidden truth that many overlook. Adversity, by its very nature, confronts us with what seems impossible. It shakes us, exposes our fears, and tests the foundations we stand on. Yet, when faith is brought into these very moments, the weight of suffering shifts. Instead of being crushed under the pressure of challenges, we begin to sense doors opening where none seem to exist. A subtle energy flows, bringing glimpses of possibility, solutions we had not imagined, or simply the resilience to keep walking when everything tells us to stop. In this sense, adversity does not end faith, it activates it. It draws from within us a strength that was hidden behind the noise, of comfort and ease, showing us that what seemed like defeat can be the ground where transformation begins. This connection between faith and strength naturally leads to Cayce's perspective on Scripture. He never treated the Bible as a rigid book of rules meant only for obedience. Instead, he described it as a mirror of the soul. Every story, every character, every parable reflects a stage of our inner journey. When we encounter David facing Goliath, we are seeing not just history, but a metaphor for the giants we confront in our own lives. When we read about wandering through the desert, it mirrors those seasons of emptiness where direction seems lost. The Bible, in Cayce's understanding, was alive, constantly unfolding, constantly revealing something new depending on where we stand in our spiritual path. But the key lies in how it is read. If we approach it with the intellect alone, we remain on the surface, locked into debates over words and interpretations. But if we read with the heart, everything changes. Meditation on Scripture, Cayce said, opens it like a door, allowing deeper truths to emerge, truths that bypass analysis and reach directly into the soul. It is in these quiet moments of reflection that the Bible ceases to be simply a book and becomes a dialogue, a living conversation between God and the seeker. One passage can be read dozens of times, yet each encounter may reveal something new, because the mirror shifts as we do. What once seemed irrelevant suddenly pierces us with clarity, because we are ready to hear it. The mindset here is crucial. Approaching Scripture not as a fixed manual, but as a spiritual map transforms the experience entirely. It becomes less about memorizing lines and more about allowing those lines to awaken something within us. Cayce encouraged people to ask, before opening the sacred text, "What is it I need to see right now?" With that intention, even a single verse becomes enough to guide decisions, heal wounds, or inspire a new direction. This is where the hidden impact of Scripture lies, not in quantity, but in depth, in the way a few words can echo within us long after we close the pages. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when Scripture is embraced as a mirror and read with the heart, it reveals not just God's story, but our own. And in that reflection, we begin to see that every step of the journey, the victories, the struggles, the revelations, are all part of a greater transformation unfolding within us. Write in the comments, "The word reflects me," if this resonates with you. One of the most fascinating revelations Cayce shared is that Scripture itself grows with us. A passage you may have read 100 times can suddenly strike with a new force, carrying a meaning that feels tailor-made for the moment you are living right now. This is why he often said that the word evolves with the seeker. It isn't the text that changes, it is us, as our mindset shifts, as life reshapes us through experiences, as we walk through joy, pain, and transformation. The mirror of Scripture reflects back something new. What once seemed like simple history takes on the weight of hidden truth. What once felt distant suddenly speaks with an intimacy that feels impossible to ignore. This is not coincidence. It is the living interaction between the divine and the soul, and it shows that revelation is never static, but continuous. When read prayerfully, Scripture becomes more than words on a page. It becomes dialogue. This is where the experience turns profoundly personal. You open the book not as a student memorizing lessons, but as a soul sitting across from the Creator. The text becomes a voice that does not merely inform but engages, whispering into the depths of your being. In these moments, you feel as if the line you just read was waiting for you, like a message hidden between the lines until you were ready to see it. That is why Cayce urged people to approach the word with openness, not only asking, "What does this mean?" but also, "What does this mean for me, here and now?" In doing so, the sacred text stops being a distant authority and becomes an intimate companion, a constant guide on the journey, and this journey inevitably leads to the awakening of something greater within us, Christ consciousness. For Cayce, Jesus was not simply a figure to be admired from afar, but a model, a living demonstration of what unconditional love looks like in human form. This was not about worshiping at a distance, but about recognizing that the same divine essence that animated him also waits within each of us, often dormant, ready to be awakened. Christ consciousness is not a title reserved for the few. It is a state of being available to all who choose love over fear, compassion over judgment, forgiveness over resentment. It is the hidden truth behind the message of the gospel, that the light of Christ is not only to be remembered, but to be lived. Think about the impact of this realization. If Christ consciousness truly dwells within, then every decision becomes a chance to embody it. The way we respond to conflict, the patience we show in moments of frustration, the kindness we extend to strangers, all of these are opportunities for the inner Christ to shine through. And every time we choose love in the face of difficulty, we take a step closer to awakening that presence more fully. Behind the scenes of daily life, this awakening is the most powerful transformation we can experience, because it redefines not only how we see God, but also how we see ourselves and each other. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when Christ consciousness begins to awaken, it reshapes the entire journey. It changes how we interpret Scripture, how we face adversity, and how we discover the divine essence alive in every corner of existence. Write in the comments, "Christ lives in me," if this resonates with you. To Cayce, the awakening of Christ within was not a distant aspiration or an abstract theological idea. It was life's highest goal. He insisted that this awakening was not achieved through extraordinary visions or rare mystical experiences, but through the simple, deliberate practice of love, forgiveness, and compassion in the ordinary flow of daily life. Every moment we choose kindness over indifference, every time we forgive when we would rather hold on to bitterness, every act of compassion offered without expecting anything in return. These are the seeds of Christ consciousness taking root. They may look small from the outside, but within, they carry immense transformative power. The hidden truth is that every challenge we face becomes a sacred invitation. A harsh word from someone close, a betrayal, a disappointment, a situation where we feel unseen or misunderstood. These are not just hardships, they are opportunities. Each one asks, will you respond from ego, or will you respond from the Christ light within you? Every act of forgiveness in those moments strengthens that light. Every gesture of kindness, especially when it feels undeserved, nourishes the presence of Christ within the soul. Slowly, day by day, these decisions shape us, refining our mindset and training our spirit to see beyond appearances into the eternal reality of love. As this awakening deepens, life itself begins to change in ways that are both subtle and profound. The ego, which constantly demands recognition, control, and security, starts to lose its grip. In its place, the soul rises, free to express itself as a channel of divine light. This transformation alters how we carry ourselves in the world. The noise of anger and fear no longer dominates. The endless comparisons and competitions lose their power. Instead, we become vessels of peace in environments where tension reigns, instruments of hope where despair lingers, reflections of love in places that seem barren of it. And what's remarkable is that this light doesn't just stay within us. It radiates outward, touching people around us without effort, like a candle that naturally shares its flame. Behind the scenes of our daily interactions, this transformation is what creates real impact. Someone notices the calm in our presence when chaos surrounds them. Another feels lifted simply because of the patience or warmth we show. In ways unseen, the awakening of Christ within becomes a gift that extends far beyond our personal journey. It creates a ripple, echoing into relationships, communities, and even into the choices we make that shape the course of our lives. When Cayce described this, he was pointing us toward a truth both simple and radical, that the greatest miracle is not external, but internal, the quiet yet unstoppable birth of divine consciousness within the human heart. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because as this inner light awakens, it reveals not only who we are meant to become, but also how every aspect of existence, our thoughts, our bodies, our relationships, even the challenges we resist, are all part of the same sacred journey of transformation. Write in the comments, "The light is awakening in me," if this resonates with you. Cayce often reminded us that the greatest miracle is not one that descends from the skies or defies natural laws in spectacular fashion. The real miracle unfolds within us, quietly, when Christ consciousness awakens and begins to be lived in everyday gestures of love. It is in the forgiveness that heals a wound, in the patience that eases another's burden, in the kindness that arrives unannounced but changes everything. Each of these seemingly small actions reveals God on earth, not as a distant presence, but as a living reality expressed through human hearts. When love becomes the default response, when compassion flows naturally, the divine is no longer an idea, it is embodied, visible, and transformative. This is the miracle Cayce spoke of, the miracle that does not fade, because it is woven into the very fabric of who we are becoming. But he also warned that many of these truths had been obscured through history. Over time, institutions shaped teachings in ways that often prioritized authority, fear, or control, rather than love and freedom. The essence of spiritual connection, direct, intimate, and liberating, was sometimes overshadowed by rigid doctrines designed to bind rather than release. Behind the scenes of religious history, Cayce believed, there was a hidden truth, that humanity had not been given the full revelation, not because God withheld it, but because layers of tradition and power blurred the original message. The result was a fragmented spirituality, where people were told they needed intermediaries to reach God, when in fact the Creator was always near, already dwelling within. Yet Cayce never saw these distortions as cause for despair. Instead, he described them as a challenge, even an invitation. He believed that God's truths are never fully lost. They remain available to anyone who seeks sincerely, not through blind obedience, but through inspiration. What has been hidden is not inaccessible. It is simply waiting for the one who dares to look deeper. A parable, a metaphor, a subtle phrase in Scripture may carry layers of meaning that only open themselves when the heart is prepared. And this is not meant to create spiritual elites, but to remind every soul that revelation is personal, that God's voice speaks in ways designed for each individual journey. The mindset this creates is powerful. Instead of being passive receivers of tradition, we become active seekers, explorers of a path that blends reflection, silence, and personal experience. Secrets, Cayce said, are not barriers, they are doorways. Each one invites us to go beyond appearances, to question, to meditate, to listen more closely to the whispers of the Spirit. And in this process, transformation begins. The hidden truth is that spirituality is not about possession of information, but about alignment with love. Every seeker who accepts this invitation discovers that God is not confined to ancient texts or distant institutions, but is found in the living practice of compassion, in the courage to trust, and in the openness to inspiration. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once we understand that hidden truths are not mysteries designed to exclude us, but invitations to draw closer, we begin to see how the journey of revelation is ongoing. Every silence, every prayer, every act of love becomes a place where new layers of divine wisdom are uncovered, waiting patiently to be lived. Write in the comments, "The truth is awakening in me," if this resonates with you. Cayce was clear in reminding us that spirituality is profoundly personal, not something confined to walls, rituals, or institutions. He believed that each soul carries within it the full capacity to meet God directly, without the need for rigid systems. or external intermediaries. This perspective changes everything. It means that the sacred is not distant or inaccessible, but as close as your own breath, as intimate as the quiet spaces of your heart. It means that no one can dictate or limit your connection with the divine, because the Creator designed it to be lived as a personal relationship, unique to your journey, your struggles, and your transformation. And when this truth begins to take root, it dissolves the illusion that holiness is something locked away in special places. Instead, it becomes a presence that follows you everywhere, shaping not only the way you worship, but the way you live. From this foundation, the 7 lessons that Cayce revealed take on a timeless character. They are not outdated concepts from the past but living principles that speak powerfully into our modern world. Silence, prayer, service, and faith are not luxuries for monks and mystics. They are practical tools that bring clarity into chaos, resilience into struggle, and meaning into lives that might otherwise feel fragmented. In a culture overwhelmed by speed, distraction, and noise, these lessons act like anchors, pulling us back to what is essential, reminding us that true strength lies not in accumulation, but in alignment. They are as relevant today as they were centuries ago, perhaps even more so, because the pace of our time makes forgetting them all too easy. And this is where Cayce's vision becomes especially transformative. Spirituality is lived in daily choices. It is not a compartment of life reserved for Sundays or sacred texts, but an ongoing dialogue expressed in everything we do. Each meal becomes an act of gratitude when eaten with awareness. Each thought becomes a seed of light or darkness, shaping not only our own mindset, but the atmosphere around us. Each act of love, no matter how small, becomes a sacred offering, a testimony that divinity is not limited to lofty moments, but thrives in the ordinary. The hidden truth is that every decision carries spiritual weight. Every gesture holds the potential to reveal the divine. This understanding reshapes the way we look at our routines. What once seemed mundane can suddenly feel infused with meaning. Caring for your health is no longer just about discipline, it is about honoring the temple of the soul. Speaking kindly is no longer just good manners, it is about echoing the voice of compassion that comes from the Creator. Choosing patience in the middle of frustration becomes a spiritual practice, no less significant than time spent in prayer. Life itself becomes the altar, and everything we do upon it is either an offering that expands our light or a distraction that dims it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once we understand that spirituality is not distant or abstract, but present in the very fabric of our everyday lives, we begin to see how the 7 lessons are not only guides, but catalysts, tools that transform ordinary existence into a living journey of divine connection. Write in the comments, "My choices are sacred," if this resonates with you. Cayce often emphasized that the divine is never far from us. God does not hide behind unreachable veils or wait in distant heavens. He is always near, waiting quietly for our first step. That step is never about perfection, never about arriving already complete. It is about humility, the willingness to open the heart, to say without pretension, "I am ready." The Creator responds not to grandeur, but to sincerity, not to ritual, but to authenticity. And this is what makes the path so accessible. No matter where you stand, no matter what has been, the journey can begin the moment you decide to take that step inward. The beauty of this truth is that the beginning requires no external stage. It happens in silence, in prayer, in the small moments of love and forgiveness offered in daily life. Each step creates impact far beyond what we see. A simple act of compassion softens a hardened heart. A decision to choose peace over conflict ripples into an atmosphere of calm. Even the quiet thought of gratitude transforms the inner landscape, tuning the soul to a higher vibration. These are not minor gestures. They are revelations lived out in real time, ways in which the eternal makes itself visible through ordinary human lives. Cayce described this as the true beginning of the journey, the realization that the road to God does not start outside of us but within. By practicing the 7 lessons, we don't just improve our personal lives, we become carriers of light that spread far beyond ourselves. Each soul that awakens adds to the collective illumination of the world. What begins as an inner shift grows into a transformation with global resonance. The hidden truth is that the world does not change simply through systems or institutions, but through individuals who dare to awaken the divine within. When one person chooses love, the ripple expands. When one person chooses forgiveness, the echo of that decision travels further than we imagine. This is why Cayce called these 7 keys timeless. They are not theoretical, they are practical tools that invite us to live differently, to embody what we seek instead of endlessly searching outside ourselves. The journey is personal but never isolated, because as soon as the light within us ignites, it begins to guide others. Without even trying, we become examples, living reminders that divine connection is real and available. This is the essence of Christ consciousness lived in the world, not something distant, but a daily unfolding of eternal love expressed through human lives. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once we recognize that the journey begins within, and that God waits patiently for our step, we start to understand that this path is not just an inner experience, it is an invitation to reshape how we live, how we see others, and how we illuminate the collective journey of humanity itself. Write in the comments, "My journey begins within," if this resonates with you. If you've stayed with me until now, it probably means these reflections have touched something inside you. That's exactly why I invite you to subscribe, so you don't miss the kind of content that continues to nurture this connection and bring real value to your spiritual journey. And since you've reached the very end, leave a comment with the phrase, "I'm with you until the end." So, I'll know you walked this path with me. I'd love to read your words. If this message resonated with you, a simple like on the video is more than enough to show that we're building this light together. And before you go, there's a video right here that beautifully complements everything we've been talking about. Click and continue with me over there.